Hi, my name is Keenan,
My name's Steve.
and this is Saving Lives with Drones. Well, Steve, this is episode number 10. Definitely thank you for being with us once again.
I appreciate you having me back for my second episode.
Yeah, second episode, and hopefully like many more. I
Yeah.
don't think I told you about that part yet, but
Yeah.
there's going to be many more ahead of time, yeah.
Let's break 100.
50, 100, hey, I'm down.
Sky's the limit.
Let's do it. So today, well, first I want to talk a little bit about our sponsors, Skyr Aerial Imagery Services. They're one of the Chicagoland leading aerial imagery companies, providing services for aerial photography, videography, mapping, and we're just thankful they're here and helping us pay the bills. So today what I want to talk a little bit about is a concept that you probably heard before called crawl, walk, run.
Right.
What does that mean to you, Steve?
Well, I would say just in general terms, you have to take baby steps before you can get up on your feet and run.
Yep.
I mean, with anything in life, you have to start off with the basics. And once you get your feet wet and you have a good understanding of what's going on, you could advance farther up through the ranks.
So how do you think that would apply to a public safety UAS program?
I would say they would have to somehow, get involved with somebody to understand the basic policies and procedures of, purchasing a drone. Let's say if they wanted to go to purchase a drone, I wouldn't say just jump ahead and drop thousands of dollars on something that they don't know any of the background information on. You have to start off small and work your way up.
Well, yeah, I agree. It's one of these things, especially with this industry being so new. You have to learn, everybody's still trying to figure things out as on how to use drones. We have all great ideas and concepts, and there's a lot of great success stories out there on the use of a drone.
Sure.
But how do you start a program? I'm the type of person, a lot of people in terms of going from 0 to 60, and they say, hey, man, I just had this entire grandiose plan from the get-go.
Right.
It's not really what I do. What I do is I typically sit back and I do homework on my own.
Sure.
Figure out what it is that we need to do and says, okay, well, I don't want to go through all the steps of getting there. Let's just get there. And my problem is that a former manager told me way back when is sometimes you have to lead people along and kind of take them on the journey with you for them to understand. Because even though that you ultimately may be correct, you still have to kind of walk them through the steps. Being correct. You think about senior management, like your fire or police chiefs,
Sure.
Your elected officials, even to a certain extent, like the public. Public education with the UAS program is incredibly important. There are still a lot of naysayers out there, and there are still a lot of folks that are kind of wishy-washy on it. But people were wishy-washy on camera phones back in the day too, and now everybody's got a camera phone and doesn't think twice about it.
You have to research people.
In fact, it's interesting. Camera phones have actually become a tool that the public actually likes to use, kind of against law enforcement. So I wonder in 10 or 15 years, someone gets pulled over, or so you're gonna see like a drone come flying out their passenger window and just just watching everything that's going on. But
Sure. Yeah,
I'm sure you've seen those YouTube videos. But and today, I'll admit, when I'm flying missions, 9 times out of 10 people are just curious, asking questions. Most of them think it's cool. I've done some stuff recreationally, like with my family. Like I was doing some subject tracking, practicing with them when they were on their boat. Everybody thought it was the coolest thing in the world. So most people are positive about it, but I've ran into some people that are pretty negative on the subject as well, and they're like, they're just like, oh, you're spying on me. I was doing one mapping mission a little while ago, and I was 120 feet above ground level and at least 200 feet away from their property line. And they said I was like 10, 12 feet away from their house. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
I wasn't even close to 10 or 12 feet away. I was above the tree lines, and the trees out here, most of them are like 70, 80 feet tall.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
and I've heard, people think it's a waste of money, and sometimes there's a bad stereotype on firemen and policemen anyway that
it is true.
We're not appreciated until you're needed by them.
And that waste of time sometimes even is seen within our ranks.
Yeah.
It's hard to go to a fire chief and say, hey, by the way, you may have to take a fireman and pull them away from actually fighting the fire to utilize this tool.
Yeah.
And they're like, whoa, you want me to do what? Because we're already have
Manpower's already tight.
exactly. So it's one of those things. But it's about safety. It's about making us more efficient. And we'll have an episode on a scenario, probably our next episode, on where there was a marina fire, and we're going to go into details. I got the video of it,
Okay.
and it was a really great example. I think if I was an instant commander, how I might do things, not so much differently, but at least have information available to me. That way I could potentially, if I felt I needed to, I could make different decisions on that particular scene. Because it's one thing when you're seeing it just from the ground level. It's another, it's a completely different scenario when you actually can see it, everything coming from the air. So that'll be probably our next episode. So let's talk a little bit about the crawl part. And crawling is basically when, in my mind, is when you're doing a whole lot of homework. And that's, developing your different policies. It isn't just, most departments think, oh, I'm going to create my standard operating guidelines and kind of go run with it. Like how I'm going to respond to an incident or maintain the bird. It's so much more than that.
Seems like more research is involved than just...
You have to figure out how you're going to legally fly. So we talked about public COAs versus Part 107. We kind of talked about the pros and cons of both. Believe it or not, that actually has changed again. Because if you have a public COA, you're actually allowed to fly over people now that are part of the incident. Let's say other firefighters and police officers that are there that are part of the incident. And you can actually fly over people if you're affecting a rescue. You can fly over those people as well.
Oh, really?
But you have to be under a public COA to do that. You can't do that under Part 107.
Okay.
So it's just one of those things that you just have to, I'm starting to feel like, if you can as an agency start off with the Part 107, then as time allows, don't pursue the public COA. Because I think there's just going to be certain times where that public COA is going to be your benefit, and other times the Part 107 is going to be a benefit to you. Because they both have their pros and cons still. But that's just one of the things that you got to figure out. You also got to figure out your data retention policy. So you're capturing all this photography and all this video. What are you going to do with it all? And the public should know what you're going to be doing with it. Are you going to be retaining it for a week? What happens if you saw a crime occur? Does it, what are the implications there? Chain of custody.
Right.
If you're supporting something with law enforcement. So these policies need to be put in place. Now, the good thing is if your your law enforcement agency has data retention policy and privacy policies for their dash cams and body cams, you can pretty much wash, rinse and repeat what they did. And, that's kind of a positive. You might want to make some tweaks depending on what your needs are, but you kind of get an idea of what a good policy would look like. And, you should work with if you're a fire department, work with your law enforcement agency saying, hey, what should we do? How should we retain this data? And you have to think about, okay, if you are going to retain the data, well, where are you going to store it? You can't just keep it on a bunch. I mean, you could keep it on a bunch of micro SD cards, but you need a drive that's backed up. And
Sure.
so
more
those
professional.
So you got to figure out, okay, where am I going to store this? Now, most organizations obviously have some type of servers to support their dispatch and CAD systems and things they do with, within the town. So obviously you could probably use some of that storage space. But these are things that you have to think about, and you have to put these things in place before you go forward. Because when the public does find out, you want to say, hey, you want to be able to say, hey, I understand your concerns. However, take a look at our privacy policies. Take a look at our data retention policies, because this is what we're doing with the data, and here it is. And we are being held fully accountable against following these policies and procedures that we've developed.
And you can maybe even have a little open house or in-service and invite the public, and everything you just explained.
Absolutely.
You could explain to the public, show them the drone itself if you have it at the time, and just...
You can totally do that. In fact, one of the things that I highly recommend is that you have like a village board meeting where you basically invite the public and just say, what are your concerns? What are you worried about?
Any questions?
And what questions you have. And then you say that these are the things that you've drafted these policies, like the privacy policy, data retention policy. We drafted this stuff to address what we think will address it. But do you think it goes far enough? And that way you get the public to feel like they're involved in the process. And it's not so much for show. It's because you want them to be part of it. Because in the end, we are servants of the public, right? So, I mean, we don't want to just do things blindly. But at the same time, we have to maintain our safety, and we have to be efficient in what we do.
Exactly.
So that's where I think that's where where we can negate some of the negativity with the public. I have a philosophy, and the philosophy is you cannot make everybody happy,
Right.
but you can make everybody a little less unhappy.
I like that.
I'm a manager taught me that a while back, and I've been trying to live like that. And yeah, sometimes I do upset some people a little bit, but overall, I try. Everybody's a little bit happier with me, and it's a way to work because there's always going to be naysayers.
Yeah.
And there's going to be people that are going to be very much pro, like, this is great.
And there's going to be people that think it's a waste of money and
Yep.
they don't understand it. And
So, yeah, totally. So when you look at equipment, starting off with a smaller drone like a Phantom Series drone is not necessarily a terrible thing to do. If you have the money, I would say go for an Inspire, like an Inspire 1 V2 or something along those nature. If you don't want to go DJI, you can maybe go Unique or some other products. I know some people are a little worried about DJI's policies and how they manage data, even though they just released, I think it was today or was it yesterday, they just released an announcement that they're going to allow like public safety and certain enterprises to no longer have to share their information with DJI. So they were basically when you would get a firmware update or whenever you connected to the internet, DJI had the ability to pull the log files. And they probably weren't using it for nefarious purposes. They're probably just seeing how the drone was actually being used, and they're probably using it for the right things. But DJI is a Chinese company, and there's no promises that how it's going to be used, or if their government says, no, we want to subpoena all your records, and then what? And then now they have all this information about, where these drones were flown and all this other stuff. So I don't, I understand the concerns that, a lot of public entities and government entities have said. I know that I think it's the Department of Defense basically outlawed all DJI drones. Like, you cannot use them for any purposes whatsoever anymore.
really?
Yeah.
Just for that purpose?
Yeah, so the Army, Navy, none of them can actually use it because they were actually using DJI products a lot. Sometimes like to do base security or stuff like that, but they can't use them anymore.
Oh, wow.
But hopefully, if this new policy comes into play, maybe the DoD will reconsider. I mean, I don't know. It's totally up to them. But at least it gives us, as public safety professionals, a choice whether we want to share that information or we don't want to share that information. Now, there could be some downsides to it, like we won't automatically get updates anymore. You have to go and, like, every week, go check DJI's website to see if they've made a change.
Gotcha.
So it's kind of a give-take. But we'll see how this all pans out. I mean, it was just a statement. Supposedly they're developing all this, so we'll see what happens. From the fire service standpoint, from our standpoint, we probably really don't care all that much if someone is looking at the log files before we fly, because reality, we're either training, right? And we're probably not going to train anywhere, sensitive.
Yeah.
Or we're going to be on an incident where odds are that going back to the same location for an incident over and over again is slim to none.
Sure.
So, because usually, once the house burns down, it's burnt down. It's not going to burn down the second time when it's already burnt down. Type
Right.
Thing, right. But, so I think it's, understanding, the type of equipment that you want to use, understanding the policies that you need to have in place. And then once you have that starter program going, then as you learn,
Get up on your feet.
use it a few times, you start getting to walk. Then you can go and say, okay, now let's get that. If you don't have the Inspire, get the Inspire, get a thermal camera for it. Or get the Z3 or something with a zoom lens so you can zoom a little bit on the subject. Then as things continue to grow, DJI just came out with a new industrial series, the Matrice 200 series. You can look into something like that, or look at some third-party drone for that type of zoom capabilities. Only downside is it really isn't what anybody in the cost effectively. There's nobody in the game right now that's doing that's the only downside.
Okay.
I don't think I can really touch like a drone that could fly both a 30x zoom camera. Actually, I think with digital zoom it's like 180x.
Wow.
Plus thermal on the same bird, simultaneously being able to fly both of those gimbals at the same time for under $35,000.
Wow.
I don't think anybody can do that yet.
So that probably wouldn't be a good first purchase.
Would not be a good purchase.
fire department.
I think that's where you would ultimately want to get to. So once you have your program go on for 3-4 years, maybe 2 or 3, whatever it may be, you got a lot of backing, you've shown a lot of value. You can actually, say, hey, we were able to save, these homes quicker.
Yeah.
Maybe you can get a grant or some funding from an insurance company that could help you out. Because, sometimes insurance companies will, or just businesses in general will, donate money to, and you can get a larger setup. My ideal situation, if I were to, pie in the sky, is I probably would have like a Matrice 600. I'd have a Matrice 210. I'd have Thermal Z3, the Z30, and maybe even an Inspire 1 as a quick aircraft, and dual controllers for everything.
And other
batteries out the wazoo. So
and other fire departments are going to see that, and
yep,
they might be calling you. If you have certain technology to maybe assist them with their fires or incidences,
and that brings up another point too. This whole crawl, walk, and run thing doesn't necessarily mean your own agency has to run. When it comes to the more specialized equipment like the Matrice 600, the 210, I think that really would make sense more of a kind of a group or divisional asset. Like for us, it would be like our MABUS division. Other parts of the U.S., they have different concepts for mutual aid. But that grouping of departments, I think, could have a shared asset.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean that every department couldn't have their own like little quick deploy, like a Mavic or a Phantom that they could immediately get up in the air that help them on 78% of the calls. But when they need that specialized, that heavy lift asset like the Matrice 600, or they need, to have the thermal imaging and the Z30, that type of like more specialized equipment, that I think could be more shared. I don't think every agency needs that.
Sure, just like a hazmat team and a dive team.
Exactly.
They all come together and use it for one purpose. Not every department can afford or has a need.
The only thing I think is a little bit different than kind of the dive and the hazmat side is you don't have to maintain equipment at the same interval with hazmat and dive that you would with a drone. So you would actually say, you XYZ department, you're actually going to manage this specialized drone for the division because it needs to have its batteries checked every couple of days. It needs, maintenance be maintained and those types of things. Hazmat, you can leave like, hazmat suits in the containers for a few months and not have to check them like every week type of thing, right?
Right.
Not so much with a drone.
Yeah.
If you try taking your drone and put it in a case and pull it out after 2 months and think you're going to fly,
it's not going to work well.
You're going to look and say, well, why do I only have one battery indicator? And then when you plug it in, it's going to say, nope, low battery. Because a lot of these drones, they have these smart batteries, and the smart batteries will start discharging themselves automatically after so much time to store them properly, increase the life of them, but most importantly, to make sure that they're safe, because a constantly charged battery is dangerous overall. It's something that you don't actually want to have. So
you have to come up with maintenance programs and
knowing how to properly charge your batteries and cycle your batteries properly, all these things need to come into play. So it takes time to build it. Dealing with insurance, if you're self-insured or if your agency needs to get aviation insurance, all these things need to come into play.
And where would you recommend for our listeners, if they're interested in trying to get their department started off, where would be the best source to go to? Especially for like the crawl phase. Like what would you recommend? Like where do they start? They have the idea in their head, and where do they go to?
Well, actually, that's kind of one of the whole points of Saving Lives with Drones in general, because we're looking. I'm trying to make this site and this YouTube channel kind of a aggregate of just all this information that others can actually leverage. So go to savingliveswithdrones.org. While we don't have all this stuff in place yet, as we get links and more information, we'll be able to share SOPs, SOGs, privacy policies, data retention policies. Right now, I'm working with, personally, I'm working with the at the state level on defining a guideline for kind of what to check off when starting a program. Like you want to make sure you check all these things off. And we'll probably send up because that's going to be publicly available information. We'll put a link to that. So, even though you're not part of Illinois, you can still look at it, use it as a reference. because that's kind of one of the reasons why I started
Right.
this whole YouTube channel and everything, because there's just a lot of information out there, but it's really hard to kind of look at one central thing, and that's what I really kind of wanted to make this to be. So you also have to think about education. There's a lot of schools that are out there. One that I'm actually fully supporting now is Drone U.
And where's that at?
They're based out of actually Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Oh, wow.
Is where they're based out of. But I'm going to be working with on their public safety program, and they're going to have trainers throughout the entire U.S. to help train. Now they're not just going to be doing public safety, but one of the things that they will be doing is public safety. But these trainers are going to be able to help agencies, be able to effectively better fly, be safer, confident when they're flying, and just help them hit the ground running, making sure if they're going to go Part 107 that they got the resources to go down the Part 107 route. And as more information comes from what Drone U is creating, we'll go ahead and share that information with everybody out there, because it's just starting kind of in its I wouldn't say infancy. I mean it's being thought about heavily right now, but there's still some things that need to be flushed out, and as they get flushed out, we'll be able to do that. But one of the things you can do if you want to sign up for Drone U, you can go ahead and click on. There's a link on the site, and you can take a look at it. And if you just want to learn for yourself, you can go ahead and sign up with them and start learning more about what it takes to be a drone pilot. So
Very cool. Definitely not an Illinois thing. It seems like it's spread across the whole country.
Yeah, totally. I mean, obviously, because I'm in Illinois, I'll be able to teach a lot of Illinois and Indiana and Wisconsin departments. And no, it's more than not just public education. It's also taking a look at, who do you, where do you buy equipment from? I mean, you can go to some of these companies that are out there that will just sell you a drone, and if you know exactly what you need, maybe that's okay. But if you want someone that's going to kind of gut check you, saying, okay, do you really need this? Maybe you should think about this. Someone that actually builds solutions for public safety and for industrial. I've talked with a lot of companies out there, and I'm very much supporting right now Rocky Mountain Unmanned Systems, because they just, after talking with John McBride, I just think they have the right attitude towards this. It isn't about them trying to make every single sale, or now they're not going to try to shove everything down that you don't need down your throat. Say, this is a solution. You're a fire department agency. 95% of them are going with this type of solution. This is what we specialize in. Here you go. So you know exactly what you're getting. They help get you up to speed on the equipment.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, they're
a nice starter.
Yeah, they're very, very helpful. Now, there are some folks that are out there, like I would say, like myself. I'm very much a geek, so I very much wouldn't necessarily jump on personally. If I didn't know who Rocky Mountain was, I would be like, okay, I would just go to a bunch of different schools, or I should say not schools, but different companies, and then just purchase my drone equipment from those different companies. But what ends up happening is we just after talking with them, I just feel that most of the agencies are going to go to them. They're going to do right by them in the end. So I'm pretty confident. I've never heard anybody complain about them, but I've heard other complaints about other companies. Like they say, hey, they just sold me this, and I didn't need it.
Right.
I don't
Kinda
understand.
taking
I don't
advantage of
understand.
them.
I don't understand what happened. And they they're companies that'll sell you stuff.
That your department or you might not need, just to make a quick sale. And in the end, it's all, the same goal is to try to help and save lives.
And there are other companies that are out there. I don't know any off the top of my head I'm sure there's others that sell towards public safety. I don't know any off the top of my head, but I mean, there are options. So, obviously invite everybody who's watching this or listening to this, do your homework, try to find a company that can, really help you make sure you're purchasing the right equipment. Get involved with a school or some education provider that can teach you how to fly, the basics, and then teach you the advanced stuff. So a lot of schools can teach you the basic stuff. And I would say 99% of them is what they're going to teach you. Teach you how to take off, land, do a box drill. Say, okay, you're done. No. Tell me how I approach a hazmat scene. And I'll talk to these schools. I'm like, so tell me how you deal with the hot zone, warm zone, and cold zone, and how do you make sure that the cold zone is not contaminated from the hot zone. And then their instructors just kind of look at me kind of like, huh? And I'm like, okay, you failed.
Right.
And we're moving on.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I like about what we're doing with Drone U, because, we're taking myself, we're looking at other people that are doing public safety, and we're actually building a curriculum that actually
That's awesome.
is by public safety people for public safety people. And it's not just search and rescue. It's hazmat, it's how to structure fire scene, wildland fire scenes, and people that actually have experience with it, both using drones and not using drones, but how would, understand how they would apply that technology. So super excited about it. And again, it's all about that, from where you're getting started to where you're going to end up. So taking it day by day is key.
Yeah.
Don't try to jump in too hard, which is something that I'm notorious personally for doing. Like, I will go head on and
Get yourself in too much sometimes.
bite off more than I can chew. Like when we lit 1830, and I was up until 3 in the morning at the fire station.
Oh no.
Yeah. Oh, I thought this would take 2 hours. 16 hours later.
Sure. And yeah, you don't want to end up like that. You want to.
Yeah, you definitely want to think things through. But it's also a tool that, you can get started with. I think most agencies, from the time of when they say, yeah, we're going to do it, to the time that they actually have something going, could easily have something up and going in 3 to 5 months.
Yeah. And that's not a long time for
that's not a long time. But doing your homework, that means that there is a lot of work to be done up to that point.
Sure.
So once
you have to be serious.
So once Mavis Illinois gets that checklist, and I'll make sure we get that on the website, and everybody will have access just to kind of get an idea. So these are the items that you want to check off. So
very good.
Yeah.
Seems like a very bright and promising future. It's exciting.
It is exciting. It's a little scary too sometimes, because you're like, when you're pioneering something, you just don't want to mess it up.
Sure. It's a risk.
There is a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot of risk, but there is, yeah, you're right. There is some risk. But on that note, I think we're going to wrap it for today, because we got to get to training.
That sounds good. You always got to keep training.
All right. Absolutely. So my name is Keenan.
My name's Steve.
And this was Saving Lives with Drones.